Ben Fox. Ben Fox es vicepresidente de Adconion Media Group, que es una de las compañías en publicidad digital de mayor crecimiento a nivel mundial ahora mismo, y es el responsable mundial de desarrollo de producto e innovación para este grupo. Hoy nos va a hablar sobre el futuro del marketing online, que va un poco sobre aquellos insights, aquellas conclusiones que se pueden sacar vía la tecnología en el entorno de convergencia en el que estamos viviendo. Tras Sebastián, tras Ben le va a continuar Sebastián Bus. Sebastián Bus es Senior Business Development Manager de Connected TVs, de televisiones conectadas en SmartClip, que nos va a hablar de cómo llegar a las personas desde un approach multiscreen, multipantalla. Dado que Sebastián es el responsable de la relación con los fabricantes de televisiones conectadas, él introducirá a Javier Sánchez, que está por llegar ahora, que es de LG Smart TV España, y nos hablará desde el punto de vista del fabricante. Y esto se verá complementado por el punto de vista de Wacky TV, que habréis visto como marca ahora ha estado en una campaña muy potente de marquesinas, donde de la mano de Josep Montleón, que es Head of Content, también nos van a dar su punto de vista. Cerraremos con un punto un poco más árido, que me toca a mí, en cuanto al marco legislativo, en cuanto a todo este desarrollo, y Andrea Andrade, que está al final de la mesa, que es consejero delegado de AEGIS Media en España, moderará al final una ronda de preguntas y respuestas, antes de que tratemos de recuperar energías en el cóctel en la habitación conjunta que tenemos. Bueno, os ruego que silenciéis por favor vuestras terminales móviles. Las preguntas que tengáis, por favor, dispararlas. Tenemos como dicen los ingleses, seasoned talkers, gente con experiencia. En el caso en concreto de Sebastián, ya me ha comentado que va a tener que...
Can you guys all hear me okay? Is that all right? Okay, great. So today I wanted to talk about the future of advertising. So the purpose of this presentation is really to provide everyone a framework for understanding what's going to happen in the future to different parts of the business. So whether you're an agency or a publisher or an ad network, this presentation has something for everyone in it, and it's designed to really simplify everything that's going on, in the space. So I'll try and speak a little bit slowly. I don't speak any Spanish. I apologize. I'm working on it, and everything I've learned so far probably not repeatable in front of large groups. Thank you. How's that? Is that on? I guess not.
Yes.
How's that? Better?
Yes.
Yeah? Great. So the future of advertising. To understand the future of advertising, okay, we have to look back, pretty far back, right? So this is an example of the first billboard, discovered in Pompeii 2,000 years ago. It's actually two gladiators. When we think about it, the first advertising medium was really the billboard, right? It's a call to action, people walking by a physical space and trying to get people to come to these gladiatorial games, right? So nothing really changes for 1,500 years or so until the printing press is invented, right? And that's the first technology that changes the first medium of advertising. So it allows you to move from a physical medium in a billboard to the physical printed page. So he combines, this is Gutenberg obviously, combining movable type and the printing press, right? And newspapers, sort of around another couple hundred years after that, are started. This is the first newspaper in the United States. And you can see the actual first printed newspaper ad in 1704. So the newspaper industry, in the US at least, is over 300 years old and starts with the advent of a new technology, right? Another 150 years go by or so, and you've got radio invented, right? So radio is now the first medium that reaches a mass audience in a sort of unwhat targeted way, right? But another technology allows you to now reach individual consumers at the millions, right? That's when you start to see the big brands create their own brand identities. They start to create the messages that they're trying to reach. You've got Procter & Gamble here in the upper left. You've got AT&T. You've got some big brands that have been around for over 100 years, reaching consumers on a mass scale for the first time. 50 years after that, TV is invented, right? And that's when you have agencies bringing the soap opera to women at home during the day. So some of the first forms of targeting actually start to come out with TV in the 50s. So demographic targeting, day targeting, right? is coming out in the 50s, right? And then another 30, 40 years after that, you have the internet invented, and then what you see there is the ability to reach a massive audience in a very, very targeted way, right? So the audience reach is increasing, the targeting capabilities are increasing, and the pace of technology is increasing faster and faster. Until we get to the last 10 years, okay? So now we're looking at Xbox, Kindle, connected TV, iPhones, iPads. Right? These new medium changes are happening every single year, right? Not every 150 years or 500 years, every single year. There's a new way to reach the consumer in a new and a different way, right? And that's why you see 200 companies or so, right? And they intermediate themselves between the audience and the advertiser. Those companies are providing a service that allows the advertisers to reach those consumers in a way that was never possible before, right? So pretty interesting. When we look at then moving forward in terms of today and last year, sort of very interesting tipping point has been crossed. When you separate out broadcast TV and cable TV in the United States, you realize that digital advertising has now become in 2012 the largest channel of advertising in the country. Okay? So for digital advertisers, yeah, are we excited? Okay. Right? This is something that they've been trying to do for a long time, right? We've been hearing digital has always sort of been in second place. Well, the tipping point has been crossed, and in 2 or 3 years, Forrester eMarketer is predicting that actually combining both TV and cable and broadcast will be smaller than the digital channel. Digital should do about $60 billion in 2015, 2016, right? So, a pretty exciting time to be in advertising, right? When you look at these different channels, what I try and remind people is that all of these channels have different kinds of rules, but they all do the exact same thing. So they're all trying to basically sell the opportunity to influence a consumer in different ways, right? They have different measurement techniques, they have different kinds of buying mechanisms, but whether you're buying in print, you're buying in digital, you're buying in TV, they're all doing the exact same thing. The catch is that digital is becoming pervasive in every single channel of advertising. So whether it's broadcast TV, which we've made a recent, obvious switch over in the US, whether it's newspapers switching to digital formats, right? Radio is now available on the internet. All of these different channels are now somehow having a foundation in digital. That means that you have to understand as advertisers the effects of digital on every single marketing channel in the future, right? And you have to make sure you bring those effects to your clients so that you understand how to be most effective in these different channels, right? So when we then look at a couple of these marketplaces, so broadcast and we look at newspapers, there's a couple things we need to really understand, right? What's happening in these marketplaces is pretty extreme, especially in the United States, okay? This is a graph of the newspaper advertising revenue in the United States for the last 60 years, okay? 10 years ago, it was a $60 billion a year industry. 10 years. That has now dropped to about $15 billion a year. So it's lost 65% of its value in 10 years. Pretty extreme, right? This evolution can happen very, very quickly. Okay? And so as you look at all 9 of those different marketplaces, we need to very much understand what those changes are going to be and how they're going to affect your clients. As an audience leaves one medium, right, the advertiser dollars leave that medium as well. As other mediums increase, viewership, advertiser dollars follow, right? When you look at broadcast TV in the United States, you see something even more interesting, which is that although viewership has dropped in half, pricing has essentially increased. And I know this is a bit different in Spain, and there's some different kinds of components to the market here. But in the United States, I think there's an interesting thing happening, which is that supply has decreased to a point in which people are willing to still pay more and more and more for it. But at some point in the future, if we reduce that audience again in half, guess what's going to happen? Pricing is going to reduce itself, advertiser dollars are going to move out into a medium where consumers actually are. Right? So the same type of evolution is going to follow print. Right? Now, there's certain things that could turn that curve back up. Right? In the United States, potentially something like a new technology like smart TV. So offering viewers new features, offering them new content, bring viewers back into a specific medium, right? So there's different ways that this thing can evolve into different kinds of opportunities for advertisers. Now that we understand the macroeconomic marketplaces that are in the space, the most important thing you need to understand next is how consumers are actually changing their activities, right? Because even though you can buy consumers and audiences today, you need to be able to actually buy the consumer in the state that they're in, not just the medium that they're in. So what I mean by that is essentially the basis of a study that Google did. So Google talked to 4,500 people, right? And they asked a very simple question. They said, when you're watching TV and you have some other device, like an iPhone or an iPad or whatever else, tablet, right? They said, what activity are you actually doing on that other device? Right? And the number one activity that came back, which surprised me, was actually email. The number one activity. So that's a pretty big challenge, right? How many advertisers are advertising in email today? Not very many, right? Even worse, right? How many advertisers have taken a TV campaign and an email campaign and planned them on the same I/O? Anyone, by the way? None. Right? And that's the same here as it is in the States, as it is around the world. But the state of the consumer that's watching TV is actually an email. Right? So that's a pretty interesting way to sort of think about how you do media planning, is to plan not against the medium, but actually against the activity of the consumer. Because remember, that consumer is adopting technology so quickly, right, that the media planning has to keep up with it. Something interesting happened when we looked at mobile. Right? This was even more pronounced. And I always like to remind people the way they have to think about mobile needs to change, especially as we think about advertising. Right? We have all of our iPhones are out, right? So mobile phones, that's a mobile phone. Samsung Galaxy is a little bit bigger, that's a mobile device, right? iPad mini, is that a mobile device? Some people, right? iPad, that's a mobile device, right? My laptop, mobile device? No, some people are shaking their heads. So suddenly in our minds we have a distinction around size of the device and what mobile actually is, right? Now I have a USB stick in my smart TV that's a 60-inch Sony TV, and I dragged it out on my back porch and I was watching TV. Is that a mobile device? It's wireless, right? If you're at home on your smartphone, sitting on the couch, you're mobile, right? Or are you? You're sitting on the couch. How are you mobile? Right? So the way you have to think about mobile differently, because it's not a channel, it's a feature of technology, right? And so the way to reach mobile users is not to reach them in a mobile environment, it's to reach them in the activity, right? When they're on a mobile device, however you define it. And so when we actually looked at 3 different studies that said, what are people doing on mobile devices? 2 things came back. The number 1 and 2 activities were actually email and social networking, right? So as you're talking to advertisers and you say, oh, you're interested in advertising on mobile? Well, let's think about an email campaign. How many people have had that conversation, right? Very few. But that's what the activity of the consumer is. So mapping media plans to the activity of the consumer, to me, is where the future of media planning needs to go. Okay? So, this is the old world of the 1970s in the United States. People watching TV, the couch potato, right? So this is someone sitting back in their TV, watching, All in the Family, and there's 70 million people tuning in on an average night for one show. That's pretty awesome, right? Okay? This is what it is actually today, right? It's no longer just showing up and actually being able to hit a massive audience in a massive way. When you do TV buying, especially in the US, you need to do it almost like you do digital advertising. You need to do a tremendous amount of targeting. You need to segment your buys. You need to geographically understand how you're buying, right? Because you're dealing with a consumer that's doing this in multiple different ways. They're in multiple states at any given time when they're consuming media, right? So what we believe is agencies need a way to promote plans that understands the state of the consumer, the device that they're on, the media that they're consuming, right? And they need to do it at scale with the right amount of targeting and in a brand-safe environment. Okay? And that's what Adconion has really spent all of its technology doing, is building a platform that helps advertisers and agencies do that. Reach these consumers in ways across platforms, across different media. Right? So what's the next big thing? So people talk about why this space is so complex, and I always like to reduce complexity because I feel that advertising is needlessly complex in a lot of different ways. Okay? So when you look at this space, there's about 200 companies in this space, and I think probably some of you have seen this slide a few times, right? Unfortunately, a lot of us have printed it out, put it in our cube, and it kind of gives you a headache, right? If we go back a second, and we look at all of the digital revenue in the space, the top 5 companies actually control 63% of the revenue. So if you're not one of those 5 guys, you're in the rest, including us, right? Okay? And so when you have these different vendors come through your doors and say, I've got the next best thing, I've got the greatest technology, I've got big data, I've got a black box, I've got all this amazing stuff, I sort of stop them and I try and answer 3 basic questions. Are you profitable? Are you acquiring in this space? And do you have some kind of category leadership in whatever you do? And when you take those 3 questions and you apply it back to this next slide, right, you get a very simple thing, right? You can take 200 companies off this list. So it reduces complexity in the space. Most of the companies in the space are running out of money, they're trying to be acquired, right? They're funded by venture capital, they're not profitable. And yes, I put our logo up there like 3 times. That was a joke, sorry. Okay? Right? And then if you look at a few of these different categories, you realize that they're not actually business categories. So retargeting, we've been offering that for 5 years, right? Data management, right? Creative optimization. These are features that have been built into other technologies in other parts of the ecosystem, right? So let's take the feature companies off this list. We can actually reduce it by another 10 companies. Because all of those companies' features actually exist on other platforms. So now we're talking about 30 companies in all of online advertising. And AEGIS is definitely up there. For sure. Right? So this is what I mean by how less complicated the space can actually be reduced to. Right? It can be actually simplified in a very clear way. Right? So when we look at what's happening to the consumer, right, their world is getting even more complex. So even though our world is getting more simple, the consumer choice is expanding dramatically, right? In the US, they're faced with 4 or 5 different kinds of distribution methods. They can get satellite TV, cable TV, fiber into the home, right? All kinds of different options. 4 or 5 different devices. They don't sit back in the couch potato anymore. They IM, they text, they Skype, right? And advertiser creative is doing its best to keep up with the opportunity to actually service these consumers, right? So agencies have this tremendous opportunity in the future to be able to provide new kinds of creative types to advertisers that didn't exist before, right? What's a creative type for an instant message? What's a creative type for the homepage of a smart TV? What's the creative to all these new kinds of places that you could be completely innovative at, right? When you're using a Connect-style interface, right? Just gesturing with your hands to control a TV because there's no more remotes. Most TVs are going to be shipping with Connect-style interfaces over the next 2 years, right? The remote control is going to potentially go away, right? And so that's an opportunity for advertisers in a very, very big way, right? So when you think about the consumer, what are they faced with or what are they surrounded by? You've heard of the first screen, the second screen, the third screen. People heard those terms before? Well, forget about it. I'm calling this the nth screen. N as in infinite. Meaning that consumers today, not in the future, these are products today. Consumers are surrounded by digital marketing opportunities in ways we didn't even imagine a few years ago, right? So connected cars. So this is a concept car from Ford. It's essentially everything in your office in a car. So you can Skype in it, you can talk on the phone, you can browse the internet, you can play Netflix in it, right? So you don't even go to work anymore, which is nice, right? Just drive around, okay? So the connected cars, right? Tesco, you guys have seen this. potentially. This is a guy that gets out of a subway and takes his phone and starts looking at a digital representation of the supermarket shelf and starts purchasing products using his phone on this digital billboard, right? And then the products are shipped to him when he gets home from work. So his groceries are sent to him by the time he gets home. But he shopped on a digital billboard. Okay, that's crazy, right? That changes $1 trillion in the US around retail space, commercial space, brand advertising, brands paying to be located in certain areas within supermarkets, right? Distribution, food storage, that changes a tremendous amount, right, if that takes hold. When you look at that integrated with appliances at home, so this is a refrigerator from Siemens that allows you to track recipes, order things from the fridge, send you reminders about what you've eaten, which I'm not sure I want, right? This is a three-dimensional billboard that's 150 feet tall on the side of a building in Berlin. So think about infinite out-of-home inventory, right? Mobile devices, of course, smart TVs with different kinds of facial recognition available. The last product in terms of the end screen that's my personal favorite is the Ylings body scale. Does anyone have this? No? Okay, you ready for this? You step on it, okay? It weighs you, and then it posts your weight to your Facebook page. Who's in? Yeah? How much paella have you eaten? Okay, I mean, this is what I'm talking about. These products exist today. None of this is futuristic. Right? All of them new kinds of ways to advertisers and reach consumers. So the end screen is here today. If we take now one step future and look into the future, right? There's one more thing that's coming that's really incredible that potentially could change advertising forever. Okay? And that's Google Glasses or Apple or Microsoft are all working on a product for an interface for consumers in the real world. So if people haven't seen what this is essentially a little 1x1 inch screen that fits in front of your eye that allows you to look in the real world but then also receive information that you can see. People are really freaked out in the front here. Right? But it's actually out, and Google's been promoting it in the United States. They have about 1,500 of them produced, and developers are using them right now to develop applications for them. So early next year you're going to see these all over the States, which is pretty incredible. Right? So Google Glasses. So the final inch of the consumer experience is now going to be controlled by an ad technology company. Right? I mean, just put the chip in my head, like get it over with, right? But if you think about it, these things, this is what my vision is. I don't know what they're going to look like. But, let's say you've got, first of all, wireless connected devices, right? It's got voice recognition, so you talk to your glasses, which is going to make for some really weird things. Right? So you're talking to your glasses. You don't need a cell phone anymore, for sure, because it's just voice recognition. It pulls up an interface, says call mom, and you see mom there, and call her, right? So you don't have to walk into lamp poles looking down at your phone anymore, right? It's a heads-up display, right? But it also has facial recognition, just like smart TV, right? So we might be walking by these two girls in the street, right? And your glasses, you look at them, and of course, what would you want to do? Maybe send them a friend request? Who's scared of that? Right? Horrible, huh? That's not good. It can't be good, right? Some guy in the back is like, yes. Right? Okay, so what about gaming, right? So think about the world of gaming. So moving the gaming industry from outside, from the home outside into the real world. So maybe integration with something like a Halo, right? Or an Xbox. And you've got that actual game inside the glasses, and now you're running around a city like Madrid playing a scavenger hunt or looking for certain products with your friends, right? Or trying to maybe like blast the alien as you get across the street, right? Okay? So if we put the advertising layer on top of this and think about how is this going to change advertising, well, potentially if you own the last inch, right, a lot of very interesting things can happen, okay? So first of all, you almost got hit by a car that was in the middle of the street, right? But your eye tracked that car as it was coming across the street at you, right? And as a heat map, the system said, all right, well, wait a minute. I know what demographic you're in. I know what city you're in. I know maybe what kind of income you have. So why don't we send you an ad for a test drive, right? Because there's a dealership, 3 miles away and we have a special on this car, right? Or how about this one? This guy that was walking behind these two women, right, has an RFID tag in his actual tag, so the suit is broadcasting information about it, right? And so the Armani ad pops up and says, 50% off this suit for the next 5 minutes, and a little timer starts clicking down, if you go buy this suit at the, on the Serrano right around the corner, right? Because geolocation will be included here, so I know where you are in relation to that store. So think of the opportunities for direct advertising, right? Incredible retail opportunities with something like this. Branding could be even bigger. I mean, absolutely incredible, right? So you just look down at the woman's purse, right? And suddenly the logo starts to animate. Gucci good, right? Gucci, right? Versace bad. Gucci good. Right? So you logos start to animate, the branding environment, everything in the real world suddenly becomes the ability for brand advertisers to reach consumers, right? So imagine Coca-Cola might say, all right, I'm willing to buy for the next 30 minutes all of the inventory in Madrid, right, around people that have this interface or have this product, right? So you look down and suddenly the street walks turned into Coke, right? Or you look up into the sky and, instead of it raining, okay, it's starting to actually come down with Coke, right? These are really bad creative examples I made myself. So agencies are going to do better than this, right? But at the end of the day, these are the opportunities that you're going to be presented with, right? So it's really interesting to have agencies and advertisers be faced with this brave new world. There's going to be a tremendous opportunity for both to be able to bring new messages to consumers in new and interesting ways, right? Adconion wants to be a partner for you in doing that. We have a point of view on this technology. We have a platform that's integrated. And we want to make sure that we're your top partner when you're trying to test all of this new inventory and these new technology in this space. So thanks a lot, and I look forward to meeting you guys afterwards.